Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mokonoman at YouTube with another 70-second armour kit. The Brummbär Grizzly assault gun on a Panzer IV chassis by 4D Models. A Chinese manufacturer with a massive and diverse catalogue of kits for educational purposes, many subjects of anatomy and war. This is a new set, came out in 2019-2020. A 3D puzzle, almost Lego-like assembly toy rather than a traditional kit that's snap fit and pre-coloured. With 6 in the set, we've covered the 6th one now. The box contains a bag of parts and instructions. For those who've seen my other 4D videos, don't stress, we won't get too much into the build as it's very repetitive. The same chassis assembly with the process of sorting all the parts out, finding the corresponding numbers on the back of the bits and assembling according to the instructions. A lot of the parts are similar and I've slotted a few bits incorrectly or the wrong order. The outer armour and wheel wells are slightly different, making it the correct dimensions and size with corresponding detail. The gun has been drilled up and sanded out, all nubs and flash marks removed with sandpaper or trimming. The entire kit was glued together to prevent cracking or separating after painting. With a wargaming level of detail and rivets compared to epic scale, ideal for painting and hand painting, I will definitely airbrush this as the existing colours is not too palatable. I absolutely love these turretless tanks. The little ball socket and barrel leads to a fair amount of articulation and pointing the barrel for wargaming. Did not like the holes at the top of the hull, which I filled with plastic plating. Stowage looked fairly reasonable and hand paintable. Rubber tank tracks with super glue stretched over the wheels and suspension for that completed look. In a little under 2 hours, I was left with a finished tank with nothing left but a bit of sanding and seamline filling with Mr. Dissolved Putty. For just a simple snap build and no cleanup, you'll probably have this done in about 15 minutes, half an hour max. With the whole set under my belt now, I'm absolutely relieved that I don't have to attempt a 3D style model for a very long time, and I honestly don't know how mass reviewers and Gundam modelers do it. Knowing this converted variant of the Panzer IV has some really out there colour schemes, including surviving examples, I've decided to Google reference material and copy that. Still at the old studio with the APR 150 cordless airbrush, I'll be freehanding a camouflage colour scheme using Tamir and Gun's acrylics. First thing first, with pre-mixed automotive lacquer primer filler, I've sprayed the whole thing to look for faults and have a nice adhesion layer for the paint to sit on top. The plastic is a recycled ABS styrene blend, so who knows if normal model paints would react too well. Some of the other 4D kits had sink marks and issues. This one seems to be pretty free of injection molding errors. With a clean canvas, I went straight to spraying the acrylics in 3-toned light sand to a near white buff with the example at the start of the video. The aim to shade in a light gradient manner with darker tones in the wheel well and underneath, under the gun, a base coat around the sides and light on the top and highlights. Followed with some creative colour selecting. I love to have a giant variety of paints, military or whatnot, to choose the right tone that matches the box art or reference material rather than rely on the name of the colours. With the same 0.3 needle nozzle on the aluminium airbrush, I've taken great care in cleaning and maintaining the rig, thinning the paint extra at a 3 to 4 part thinner to 1 part paint, and its normal battery powered low PSI, gently sprayed the camouflage pattern all around freehand, looking at multiple views of the reference material. To make sure I wasn't spluttering or causing any issues, I did some test patterns on a a piece of paper and a lot of lines to be in ultimate condition. Afterwards, a bit of shading on top of the existing lines to have a two-tone difference to connect with the under base coat, and did a bit of shadowing with clear smoke around the wheel realms, the vents on top, around the gun barrel, and other areas where shading would just give the whole color gradient more viability. Allowing all of this to dry, picking up the hand brush, I started with the track wheels by doing the edges and then coloring it in, the wheel rubber around, and any bits of stowage sticking out. Normally 70-second stuff is very fine and it's hard to do unless you have an absolute 2 to 4-0 brush, though 4D is a bit more cartoony, pops out more and is far easier. Again, ideal for beginners that are working with something at such a small scale. It is nicknamed Braille scale after all. To finish off with a pop and some definition, I got some Tamiya accent colour and thinned it 50-50 with gum turpentine and gave a complete sludge wash. Thinning it further, make sure that you don't dirty the whole part and everything properly recesses straight into any seams, detail or panels, and at a much slower drying rate you're able to whisk any excess build-up with a tissue with minimal cleanup time. Now the model is starting to take visual form and converting from a painted toy into something depicted in scale. Extra tips like pigments and dry brushing, edging is also welcomed. A massive disadvantage, 4D does not come with markings or decal, though to the advantage of the amount of models I've collected over the years. I've got such a large surplus of water slides that it doesn't really matter too much unless I was working on a very obscure country or period of history. Soaking in the trumpeter decal tray, which is insanely handy, for about 2 minutes, transferring across, dabbing and clear coating. I've moved to a Mr. Color clear flat and flat base rough to dull the entire surface, ideally for pickup with pigments and a weathering pencil. With a pigment pencil at hand, this one for makeup, I've highlighted all the edges and did a bit of dry brushing, then applying the Mr. Clear Flat and flat base, a very heavy dose, to dull as much as possible without a sheen. I was able to get a luster that was ideal, similar to the Gaia Notes Flat Clear Premium that I enjoy very much. Mr. Color is far easier to acquire. Clear Flat and the 2 flat bases can be bought on Amazon, eBay. All of this rounding up and leading us to a fairly polished and finished model. Not a lot of time was spent on this and it's far from perfect. I didn't take enough time to look at reference if there should be a seam or separation from the upper hull where the personnel component is and the lower hull. There's probably some other gaps that I'm suspect that should not exist due to the cheap nature of the model. I did ram some Q-tips into the rubber tracks and ran super glue down to have more of a drooped realistic effect, though overall the finish is the major component that matters the most. A lot of work was not necessarily put in, just a number of steps where I've taken my time and did it neatly, of shading more than one color for effect, doing the freehand camouflage with practice, and decals always bring a subject matter together and finishes it well. If models don't come with decals, or you ideally would really want one, stencils are easy enough to come across or make up, though having a hunt on eBay or anywhere around the internet, they're so numerous and fairly cheap in a large sheet to cover a whole range of subjects, scales or errors. It's really just worth investing in. This also goes for people who do paint and finish resin tanks or even 3D print tanks. The decal always rounds it up and puts it in the same realm, scale and community as the plastic model kit assemblers. A long time ago when I was new to modeling, the most fun I had was the building stage and the longest period of time I would spend with a project. But as time went on, the longest stage started to become painting and not necessarily building, especially if assembly painting was in order. The build of this was a bit tedious, though very quick to overcome, and the paintwork is where all the effort put in. I had a lot of fun and very pleased with how this came out, and do recommend this subject matter. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. We'll catch you guys next time. Check out the description section for reference and social media, and stay tuned for more armor builds.